Hello, you're listening to the show where we bring you the latest in cybersecurity news, research, and leaders. My name is Mackenzie Jackson, and this is a Secure Disclosure. We're starting off the show in a segment with Jacques, Louw, the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of Push Security. We're going to discuss their latest white paper research project about the evolution of phishing attacks. We're going to talk about what on earth is trending in the world of phishing and why this is still such a problem for us in 2025. Next, we're going to go into our news deep dive. We're going to look at the WhatsApp iOS 0-click vulnerability, which allowed spyware and malware to be installed on users' mobile devices without them ever having to click or do anything. And finally, we're going to head down to the cyber sake bar with the world's #1 competitive hacker, Philippe Dourassov. We're going to discuss what it's like to compete on the world stage in competitions like World Skills and DevCon. And we're going to talk about why this led him to develop his own startup. It's a fascinating segment, so you're going to want to stick around to the end. Before we get into our first segment, please do me a quick favor. Please like this video or podcast and subscribe to the channel. Every subscriber makes an adversary cry. That is a fact. So make sure you go ahead and do that. All right, enough about that. Let's move on to the first segment. Phishing attacks still seem to be one of the biggest chinks in the cybersecurity armor. We don't seem to be getting on top of this, even though it's been around since the start of the cyber attacks. This is partly because it relies on the weakest link of cybersecurity, humans. But it's also partly because attackers continuously update their methods. Phishing is becoming more and more sophisticated along with everything else. Push Security brought out a research white paper called The Evolution of Phishing Attacks. It looks at where we are right now in phishing and why it is still such a big problem, along with the biggest technical trends that we're seeing out there in the wild. To discuss this white paper, we're bringing onto the show Jacques Louw, who's one of the co-founders and chief product officer at Push Security, to discuss the latest trends. It's an awesome segment, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Jacques, welcome to the show. It's amazing to have you here, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to join me.
Yeah, great getting a chance to chat about this. Obviously a topic I care about a lot, so yeah, love talking about it.
Yeah, well, you've got a bit of media coverage recently because of a white paper that you published out there. I read it. It's kind of a great snapshot of where we've kind of come from and where we're going in terms of kind of phishing campaigns, which is still just such a predominant threat. And I guess like phishing still remains one of the biggest attack paths that we face, even now so many years on.
Yeah, no, it's actually really surprising. I mean, we started doing this, 15 years ago as junior pen testers, and we thought like, oh, cred phishing is going to be this short-term thing. It's a technique we use now, but surely we're going to get across this, and it's going to be something that goes away like all other attacks. And yet, weirdly, here we are in 2025, and it's a richer seam of attacks as any other. So yeah, no, it's surprising.
It is very much surprising because it still seems to be how most adversaries are kind of getting in. I want to kind of like start off then and kind of dig into some of the information that you have in this report. Like from your perspective and from the research that you did in this, what's the kind of biggest misconception that people are facing around phishing campaigns now in 2025?
Yeah, I think there's sort of a couple there. I think the first one maybe is just when I speak to my ex-colleagues, incident responders know this already, but the guys on the red team side are often thinking about this very much still in the same kind of, you spin up a website, it's a static HTML site that, asks you for a username and password, and that's kind of the game. But it's moved on so much beyond that. Predominantly the tools we're seeing now are all sort of like, they're much closer resemble a reverse proxy than an actual static website. They're all attacker in the middle tools. So they're basically just like man in the middling you between you and the actual thing they're trying to steal creds from. So that's been a big change. I think the second thing that's changed wildly is the amount of maybe not the amount, the massively small amount of time that the really good phishing pages are staying up. So it used to be the kind of thing that you could think about, like classifying a domain and getting any value from that. But now, I mean, like the attacks we're seeing, we're detecting them. And within like, sometimes we're hitting these things like 15 minutes later and they've already gone down. So these attacks are coming up, getting used. And as soon as someone uses them, they get pulled down. And the way they're doing this is by actually, they're not buying domains anymore. It's quite expensive to spend even, like $15 a domain or whatever. And they're just buying subdomains of like really common domains. So like we're seeing something like .sa.com, .it.com, .es. So like there's a lot of these domains that are getting used incredibly frequently, and it's because they can get you can buy and use them once for very, very cheaply. They're using wildcard subdomains on the certificate, so it's very easy to keep flexing this infrastructure very, very quickly, like just 10 minutes at a time. You can, they're making links that are targeted at one specific user, so every person in the campaign gets their own URL. That's not something we've seen before. And I think maybe the third misconception is that, it's only coming through email. I think that's kind of where our brains were at, but that certainly isn't the case these days anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was something in the report that I wanted to kind of touch on, is that when I think about phishing, when people talk to me about phishing, my brain just goes to email immediately. But as kind of the report mentioned, that's not necessarily the only go-to. What other formats other than kind of email are being used in phishing campaigns like today?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because I think we were kind of expecting that all the phishing we were detecting came through email as well. And like a while back, we launched a feature where we were actually properly tracing through the origin and like what is the original tab where the user started clicking to open subtabs, etc., and eventually get to the phishing page. And we realized like actually it's probably closer to half. When you're looking at the browser, we're looking at the attacks that make it into the browser. So typically we're looking at the more sophisticated attacks that make it through your email security and all the rest of the things. So like that number is skewed. But having said that, we're seeing stuff coming from the popular messaging apps, Slack, Teams, WhatsApp Web, LinkedIn Messenger, all these kinds of things. That's kind of expected, and maybe like a narrow evolution on just sending emails is just, sending emails to whatever the new email thing is. But the more interesting thing actually for us has been looking at the attacks that are happening through malvertising. So people are buying up Google ads and then just presenting the Google ad for the thing they're trying to phish. This is like, it's doubly interesting because what we've realized is like, why does this work? And it turns out a hell of a lot of people are actually like, don't remember the URL or don't bookmark the app. They just Google the app name and then click the first link and then hope to get to the login page through that. So yeah, that behavior is obviously driving a lot of this attacker ability. And like, it's interesting to see the kinds of things they're targeting. So you think about like malvertising is traditionally like impossible to target this thing. But then you look at like how geographically distinct these attacks are happening and like, but yes, of course, like Google advertising like does actually allow you to do pretty like micro targeting. So I don't know, if you wanted to target Boeing, you could probably target, I don't know, Arlington, wherever their headquarters are. You could probably target the aerospace industry. You could probably target a system administrator. You couldn't target the exact employees of that one company you're targeting, but you could probably get pretty damn close. And you're not coming out of marketing budget. This is attacker budget. So like, I'll just bid more than anyone else for this ad. I don't care as an attacker. So yeah, I'm sure that's what's driving some of this as well.
Should these advertisers be doing more? Are they doing something? Is it just economies of scale? Like why is this happening on the kind of the advertising phishing side?
I guess probably for the same reason that just generally detecting these things automatically is incredibly difficult. I mean, there's no real way these things are like these ad exchanges or people are bidding to place ads at like microsecond scales. How are you going to vet the links that go into these ads at that scale? Like, I think it's basically an impossible task for them. And then on the flip side, even if you were going to do that, okay, you can host legitimate things on Microsoft.com. So looking for the fact that I am like marketing something or advertising something that has a Microsoft.com legit link, like even that is going to be impossible. So yeah, I'd love them to do more. I'd love for advertising to go away completely, but in the modern world, there isn't like really something practical there, I think.
I mean, I just can't even imagine how you would go about it. Moving on to like another scary factor for me is one of the things that I really thought would change the game was multi-factor authentication, and when that became really normalized. And just to give you an example of something that's kind of happened recently is there's a package manager called NPM for JavaScript. NPM enforces you to have multi-factor authentication if you're a popular maintainer, yet all these popular maintainers were getting phished and their accounts accessed even though they had multi-factor authentication. How is this possible that people are bypassing MFA via these kind of phishing campaigns?
Here is the fundamental takeaway from this thing is like the weird insight here is that modern identity technology is like additive. We keep adding new things and better things, but all the old things still stay. So that means like over time, it's not like we're moving towards a more secure infrastructure. We're just adding a more complex infrastructure. So it used to be username and password, and then we were like, okay, cool. We want to do some single sign-on. Let's add SAML. Okay, we want to do OIDC as well. Let's add that. Okay, we want MFA. Do we want push MFA, token MFA, SMS MFA, email MFA, like whatever that thing is, let's add it. Biometrics, let's go. Passkeys, let's go. So everything just adds on top of each other. And eventually what you end up with is just this incredibly complicated stack that doesn't work like the simple network diagram picture you're expecting. You have these things that are integrating not one with the other, but they're using weird third party to So the ultimate cause of this, I think, really is just the massive complexity for making all these things interact. The specific things are, like the consequence of this is that you see attacks like MFA downgrade. You created this account 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Back then you were like first on the bus. I'm going to do MFA. Which MFA methods do you have? SMS? Great, I'll do that. Was it perfect? No. Was it better than nothing? Absolutely. Today, same account. We now support passkeys. Fantastic. I'm going to add a passkey. Both those MFA methods still exist in that account. When you get phished for this thing, the attacker is in the middle of that conversation and the app says, provide your passkey. The man in the middle here, the attacker in the middle says, actually, I don't want to use my passkey. Show me what alternative MFA methods I have. The provider sends that response, and that's the response that gets shown to the user. So the user doesn't even select the passkey or the SMS MFA. They just get automatically passed through to the SMS MFA and go like, why is this thing? Yeah, that's weird. I thought I had a passkey, but cool. Here's the SMS code. And so for push authenticators, for whatever it is, like very, very few MFA methods. Like it's really only WebAuthn that is properly like domain bound, phishing resistant. And, the amount of accounts that we see in our product that are like, there is MFA on this account and there's only one MFA method and that MFA method is strong. Yeah, it's not a huge number. I think even if you get through even if there is good MFA, you're seeing guys like Scattered Spider and these kinds of groups like targeting people and say like, okay, cool. I got the username and password. How do I just get the MFA reset? And like to get a help center to reset your MFA, much easier than having to say like reset my password and the MFA and everything all in one go. So like, it's complicated.
One thing that you mentioned earlier on that I kind of want to double tap on is you're talking about, using the Microsoft domain there for the phishing, you're hosting pages inside that. How much of an impact does this play in kind of phishing attacks? We see it kind of, our audience will probably be very familiar with this happening kind of on GitHub, where you can host a page on GitHub with the GitHub URL, and that could be potentially a man-in-the-middle account. You see it with Google Drives in places. I've even seen Google Calendar kind of phishing links, areas like that. What does this kind of play, this kind of this ability to create pages in trusted sites? How does that play into modern phishing campaigns?
I think maybe it's good to separate these into like two things. So one of these techniques might be called something like domain camouflage. So I think when you're going to be delivering these links through a vector like email, especially where you're expecting something to inspect all these links, you want to use like a legitimate service to basically do, process that link for you. So even if you are hosting that domain or the phishing page on a .ru website, like it couldn't look any worse. But you can still bounce through something that is very legitimate looking. And so like the typical things we see there are, DocuSign, Jotform, Figma, SharePoint, like anything that will host something that looks like a PDF for you. So you click a legitimate DocuSign email. It takes you to the real DocuSign website. It opens up a form and it says that, the document you're supposed to sign contains only one thing. And it's a link that says, click here to open this, to unlock this document or preview this document or whatever. So they're abusing the flows within those apps or, there's 1,000 of these examples and they're all like customized for which app you use to actually deliver that link for you. Now, from an email perspective, what are you supposed to classify DocuSign as a malicious website or something suspicious? Of course not. So once you're in that DocuSign website, you click another link, and that secondary link is basically like camouflaging the first link that's delivered through email. And then you have the second part is, where do you go after that? Where's this phishing page actually hosted? And I think what we're seeing is that the majority of these things are hosted on domains that are very quick and easy to rotate. So there's actually not that much like hosting of the final phishing page or the phishing app on something like GitHub or Google. Of course there are, you can host whatever arbitrary web page you like on like scripts.google.com. But I don't think a lot of people go through the effort of doing that because they want that domain rotation and that path rotation to happen really, really quickly, and for this to be like takedown resistant, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think that's maybe why we're not seeing it so much. And I think like at the point where you're past that like traditional detection point, you're outside of email, then all bets are on. There's basically no detection. So then at that point, like, why not host it wherever is easiest?
That makes total sense. So we've just mentioned a whole bunch of scary things. I'm kind of freaked out. What about defense? Okay, like what does modern phishing defense look like? If it's not blocking DocuSign, if it, it's clearly we're not making so much progress on this broadly. How can companies that want to do more than just the standard, what can they do?
If you're relying on detection in the kind of legacy way of just saying like whatever comes through email, be sure that that's not going to be enough anymore. I would say like looking at things that happen on the network is useful, but it has limited use because like there's a lot of code obfuscation and dynamic content generation and things that are happening basically to evade those network detections. So, I mean, that's why we think basically that the way to resolve this is to do the detection at the same place that your user actually gets attacked in the browser. But having said that, I mean, like, of course, I know not everyone is going to be able to acquire new technology or like, chase something like this immediately. And I think if you're maybe a smaller company and you have an ability to lock down your environment and you can deal with things like, enforcing a much more hardened identity policy, like, and you don't maybe have so many apps that are outside your core SSO and you're like, a smallish company, you could deal with that. And I think making sure that you have just like very good identity hygiene. So making sure that you have passkeys everywhere that's possible, making sure you have as much behind SSO as possible. But generally, I mean, it is a very tough problem to approach without having like visibility at the same level where the user getting attacked has visibility.
We can't have a podcast today without talking about AI. I'm sorry, but we have to bring it up or no one will subscribe. So how is kind of AI affecting kind of Gen 3 phishing in the future? What is it kind of bringing us to the next evolution? And if not, or if so, like what is that next evolution of phishing?
It's very hard to say what's going to happen, but I can tell you like the initial signs that we're seeing of like AI use already. And it's not in the place that we thought. It's in a very weird place. But okay, so like take as an example that attack I was telling you about, which the attackers were using malvertising. And so they're pushing like a Microsoft domain, which redirects you to some custom domain. So in the blog post, you'll see, I think that attack went to something like bluegraintours.com. It's like a really random domain and it doesn't look immediately like phishing. And so when you see this in a log or when you see this in like domain categorization, when you click on the link from the malvertising, from the Google results all the way through, there's a paste hosted on that domain, which is just straight Microsoft phishing, like no questions. This is just 365 phishing. But when you visit that domain, like just clean without any path, you just visit the base domain, the homepage on that domain, what you get is like a seemingly pretty realistic travel website. It looks like a tour operator in Canada and like it's got all the human faces there, all the contact details are there. Like, so initially we're like, this must be like some kind of WordPress site that got compromised or something and they've uploaded this thing. But what actually happens is we're like, after looking at the code and just looking at like none of the links go anywhere, none of those humans exist, the addresses don't exist, the whole website, the whole front of that thing appears to have been like vibe coded start to finish. We're actually starting to see this domain more and more. So like almost every detection domain we see is like now like backed by a legitimate looking web page. Our best guess for why this is happening is that there is something out there doing domain crawling and domain inspection and categorization. So, you see something suspicious happening, some kind of crawler visits that site and says like, okay, cool, no, this is a travel website, this is a tour operator website, or, this is a manufacturing website, or this is a, whatever the case is, a real estate development website, like almost every category. So it seems like someone has someone is building an AI that just says like, create me a company website for XYZ, and it's just dynamically doing that almost every time you access a domain. So every time a domain gets spun up, something legitimate looking gets spun up, but none of this has anything to do with the attack. Like the attack works, nothing is stopping those attacks. Like in broad strokes, most of the legacy stuff isn't touching the actual core attack code. So no need to use AI there yet, I guess.
You just kind of made me terrified of something. Dynamically creating like sites, and like we're kind of there now. I'm just trying to think about it takes like 2 minutes to spin up a complete site with Lovable or something like that. Then yeah, I can totally see how this is all just the speed of this, even the creation of the site is like so rapid. Well, there's going to be a link down in the description where you're listening to this of the white paper that we've kind of been talking about today. It's called The Evolution of Phishing Attacks by Push Security. And Jacques is, in fact, the author, one of the authors of that. So if you're interested to learn more, there will be a link for that wherever you're watching or listening to this. Jacques, it's been a really fascinating conversation. I'm slightly terrified, but I do have hope now that you've described. But I do want to thank you for spending the time with us and going through this. So we really appreciate it.
Great chatting. Thanks for having me.
And now for our deep dive into our new segment of the week. Imagine if your phone could be completely compromised just from you receiving a message. You didn't click anything, you didn't do anything, you just got a message. Well, this is the exact scenario that has been observed in the wild. It pairs together two vulnerabilities, one from WhatsApp and the other from Apple iOS. Together, attackers were able to completely take over some victims' phone and install spyware onto them. This all originates with a vulnerability from WhatsApp, which was patched in August 2025. The vulnerability CVE 2025-55177 was noted as incomplete authorization of a linked device synchronization message. Now, I know that's a bit of a mouthful right there. But essentially, what this meant is that attackers were able to use this to arbitrarily execute URLs that they send to a user without any interaction from the user themselves. That in itself was bad enough, but this was then paired with a vulnerability from Apple to make matters worse. It all starts with the WhatsApp vulnerability. And what does it actually mean when we say incomplete authorization of a linked device synchronization message? Well, with WhatsApp, you have a primary device, in this case, nearly always your mobile phone, and then you have secondary devices. Maybe that's WhatsApp on the web or a desktop application. It allows you to sync the two together. And to create a seamless experience, it does this through synchronization messages, where it sends over all of the messages, plus the metadata and images and downloads and things like that between the devices. What the attackers figured out is that WhatsApp didn't actually check the origin source of this synchronization message. This meant that if an attacker was able to craft a synchronization message that was in fact correct according to WhatsApp, then WhatsApp wouldn't check where it came from and instead would just execute it, syncing together all of the user's data from their primary device to their secondary devices. But malicious content had been slipped in there as well. Because this was coming from what WhatsApp thought was a trusted source, it then fetched all of that content and processed it, even though inside that was malicious instructions from the attacker. So a legitimate synchronization message may look like this, where you have some media and then a URL containing that media there. WhatsApp will then process that, fetch that image, and display it on the linked device. But what if we replaced that media with something evil? In this case, we have the same type of content, in this case, media content, but we're going to evil.com. It's going to fetch that, process that image, and run it. And that's how we're able to get WhatsApp to execute malicious commands without the user actually doing anything, because it's all part of a synchronization process. Now, this is, of course, bad, but it actually gets a whole lot worse because they chain this together with a very complicated vulnerability from Apple. The vulnerability, noted as CVE 2025 43300 is what they call an out-of-bounds wire memory vulnerability. This vulnerability occurred when the Image I/O framework, which is part of Apple's iOS operating system, received a malicious image or payload which would cause memory corruption. This memory corruption allowed the attacker to write outside of the allocated memory slots, which a very, very sophisticated attacker could then turn into arbitrary remote code execution. So, when we combine this together, the synchronization message, which contains a malicious payload that actually has a malicious image inside of it, which is then run by the framework I/O, which causes memory corruption and allows the attacker to do remote code execution on the phone with 0 clicks whatsoever. I can barely follow along with this myself. This is clearly the sign of a very sophisticated attack group. In my opinion, which I don't know for sure, I would say that this is the work of a state-sponsored APT. It has all the hallmarks of that kind of sophistication. Moreover than that, only 200 people were affected, or at least WhatsApp sent messages to 200 people to let them know that they had been potentially affected. I don't know, but I would assume that these 200 people aren't 200 random people, not with this level of sophistication. Now, I would never encourage anyone to do anything malicious or illegal, but gosh darn it, you have to admit that was pretty impressive. And now it's time to quickly mention the sponsor of this show, Aikido Security. Aikido Security is your complete code-to-cloud security solution. Aikido secures everything from the first lines of code that you write all the way to your cloud environments. Aikido's superpower is noise reduction, getting rid of those pesky false positives. I would love to tell you about all of its amazing features, like its reachability analysis on dependencies, breaking changes, AI autofixes for your code, containers and cloud, and even AI-powered human written code quality checks, but I just don't have time and I want to get back to the show. But thank you, Aikido, for sponsoring this podcast, and make sure you check them out at aikido.dev and sign up for free and check it out today. All right, let's move on to our last segment. We're going to head down to the Sabisaki bar with a key leader in security to discuss some trends. We have a great guest today. We call this segment Unfiltered Sake. I'm thrilled to be here with Philippe Dourassov. How you going, Philippe?
Doing great, thanks.
Today we're going to be kind of diving into a world that I don't know a whole lot about, which is competitive hacking, which is a thing, and you are currently ranked number 1 in the world, so it's pretty impressive. But before we get into that, we're going to try some sake today. So we have 2 sakes to try, and we're going to mix it up a little bit. The first one here, we have a traditional Japanese sake. This one is from Okayama in Japan, and then we have a Californian sake. So we're gonna see which one is your favorite. I'm not gonna tell you which is which. we're just going to get into it now. Cheers.
Cheers.
You don't need to shot this. Some guests do find that confusing. So.
All right.
What do you think?
Pretty nice. I like.
It's a nutty one. Okay. We'll do at the end. We'll do the reveal of which one you liked best and which one was the Japanese and which one was California.
Sounds good.
I want to start at the beginning though. So obviously you're a very established pen tester, hacker, ethical hacker at the moment. Where did this all start? Where did the curiosity for this get started with you?
Yeah, so I think I wanted to become a hacker for a while, and at some point I saw that there was this 10 hours full guides how to become hacker on YouTube, and me being like 15 years old and impressionable, like I thought, okay, this is perfect, this is what I need. And after 20-30 minutes I just couldn't anymore, like it was too boring, right? It's actually then there that I realized that theory is absolutely not working for me, and like I need to have hands-on stuff to appreciate something and have fun there. And then I discovered John Hammond, which made a video on Try Hack Me, which I tried the platform from there. And so that web exploitation was pretty fun. Like all of these websites are actually hackable, right? Played around a bit. I started doing competitive competitions as well. So like CTF, capture the flags, and did a bit of bug bounty as well. And I saw that, hey, actually what you learn there it's actually quite realistic. People don't know how to create secure websites, and even in like 2020 when I started, like it was already terrible. Like it's impressive how many of those issues you think that are completely unrealistic and obvious to fix, and turns out people don't know or don't care, right? So like I thought like, okay, wow, this is insane, this is crazy, and from there like I started doing these competitions, right? So just getting better and better. I think the fact that you can see yourself progress every time you do a new competition, every weekend, you see yourself becoming better and better, solving more and more challenges, scoring higher in the scoreboard, right? And even when you're not able to solve a challenge, when you have this very hard problem that you don't know how to tackle, well, you always get a learning out of it, because at the end of the competition, people share about their solution. There's a lot of community around the CTF that is very beginner friendly and really helpful when you want to get started and discover stuff, right?
I find that kind of in general with security, it's a very daunting thing to start with these, but I do find it it's like a very welcoming place. What is kind of like a good starting point for people then? Like if you were going back, like, because I think one of the things that's like daunting about starting this process is that there's thousands of different vulnerabilities. You can become an expert in any of them. And I think that that's how a lot of people like kind of get some of these more advanced bugs, because they become like true experts in cross-site scripting, SQL injection, those things. Where do you start? Like what's a good vulnerability to kind of like start with?
I would say that most importantly, even before going into like specifics, one thing that is important is figuring out what's the best way of learning for you, what works best for you. For me, it was just practical. It was breaking stuff until I'm like, and failing until like I do it again and fail enough time that it works, right? For others, it might be theory. There's plenty of books that could work for others. There's plenty of YouTube videos as well, guides of awesome YouTubers that share their knowledge with people, right? I do think that it's hard to directly go into practice, have a website, and okay, now I'm going to hack it, and you don't know where to start, right? So maybe I would say that starting with either beginner CTFs that learn you the basics about web exploitation, for example, or maybe videos that explain the different concepts of web hacking, right? I think those are good resources to get started. If you want theory, you have plenty of interesting YouTube videos. If you want practice, you have plenty of people that created labs, created challenges to, well, practice those exploits techniques.
So there's things like Try Hack Me, which are great because they create kind of purposely vulnerable applications. But what was the moment that you had where you found something like in the wild and you're like, oh my God, this isn't just like a game anymore. This is real life.
Maybe there was this one time where I kind of accidentally hacked Discord.
that could be a cool story.
I was using Discord a lot before to communicate with other people through either these competitions I was doing or just playing with my friends, right? And I started looking at how Discord works, which is perfect because Discord also has a bug bounty program. So I am actually allowed to do active hacking there, right? And try to exploit it. And very quickly I realized that it's not as safe as I thought. Like even the big popular applications there have many issues. And I can't go into the details of what happens there, but I did find a super interesting issue that could have allowed me to get any files that were uploaded on Discord, right? Which is quite crazy. And I was only a beginner at that point, right? This was crazy. This was insane. And from there, I realized that, okay, now the more I get better, the more crazy stuff I'm able to do. It actually worked, right? I got better and better, and now I'm able to find vulnerabilities in huge applications and get a job out of it and do bug bounty and start startups as well, right? And creates automations for, well, security, right?
Yeah, that's really cool. And as a bit of a spoiler, you have gone into startup world. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that at the end, kind of what you're working on there, which is really cool. I want to kind of dive into competitive hacking because this is going to be something that most people like aren't really familiar with at all. Because you know, especially if you're not familiar with like the white hat hacking kind of area. So you have these capture the flags event, but there's one in particular, World Skills, which is kind of like the Olympics for a lot of things in technology, I guess you could say. What's the process like of entering these large international competitions. How do you get selected to do that? Can anyone just appear? And kind of what's the process like at such a kind of global level?
The first step here is that you have to be selected by your own country. In this competition, every countries were able to send 2 people at this competition, right? For Switzerland, which is the country where I'm from, the process was that you had to compete into Swiss skills first and get good results there. So the first step is to get 2 gold medals, because it's every 2 years, the World Skills, and Swiss Skills is every year. So you had to get good results. Maybe not gold medal, but I did second place, then first place. That was enough. And then you get selected by your country to get to the World Skills. And from there, you have to try hard. You have to intensively train a lot. You have to basically sacrifice 8 months of your life of just getting better and better to be able to have a chance at it, right? And that's what we did. It was not easy, honestly. I mean, at that point, I was studying at the university. At the same time, EPFL, I had to manage the 40 hours of studying plus the 30 hours weekly of training for the competition for multiple months. Good thing I had my teammate with me to kind of support each other in the mall. He was also able to do the task that I didn't like and he did like, which was perfect because we're quite complementary there. And after this training, well, you get invited, well, you go to the competition itself, right? 2024 was in France. I think next year is going to be in Shanghai. But yeah, France was pretty convenient. Switzerland, super close to France. There's no jet lag or whatever. Quite happy about it, not gonna lie. And yeah, you get there. You have 4 days of competitions.
And once you're in the competition, what did you have to do? Like, what did you have to hack? What do they give in front of you to actually kind of test everyone?
So it wasn't only offensive, actually. It was quite large. So there was some defensive part where you had to do forensics. For example, you had this malware you had to decompile and understand how it works, right? You had this log traffic where you have to analyze where is the data exfiltrated, how are they doing this, what encryption are they using, right? And each day you have a different theme, basically, right? The first day was, I think, forensics. You had to do this analysis. It was 8 hours, I think. And then the second day was more offensive. So this is closer to what you would have during penetration testing. You have applications, you have to get in there and have a root shell there, right? And this goes through classic web exploitation techniques, privilege escalation techniques as well. Goes to pivoting into the internal network, finding the other hidden websites and go further and further into the network. And super interesting stuff, but extremely complex because we only had 8 hours and this was like 1-2 weeks long kind of assessments if it was a normal situation, right? And every team is doing their best as well. Like there were huge countries there with much more budgets and people in there as well, right? I mean, Switzerland is 8 millions, 9 millions people living there. China is like more than 1 billion, maybe 2 billion, I don't know. And we had to compete against the 2 best hackers from the 2 billion people there, right?
Yeah.
It was so intimidating. It was really hard to see them go up the scoreboard, then we go back up then.
Yeah.
And like it was just super close all the time, right? And then at the second day, we finished it, and then my teammate who worked with me started to feel sick. He actually had a fever at this point, and it was the worst timing because we're doing somewhat well, and like I don't know, he gets a fever and like just loses all of his energy. But we cannot stop there, right? Like we're like we can do it. We're pretty close to just win this whole competition that we trained for 8 months, right? Somehow he manages to like still carry on the load and go all the way there. It was impressive. And then the fourth day was quite easier, which was very fortunate because at this point we were exhausted. And yeah, the fourth day I think it was just the classic SOC stuff. You had to look at traffic, find the malwares and C2s. And yeah, I think most teams got all of the points there. So we are quite relieved to not have to go another day of just... I think we would have died if we had to go the same intensity as the other days. So then, like, after these 4 days, we get this, like, 1-2 days of suspense where we don't know what score we had, and the ceremony is going to announce whether we had the medal or not. And then we go to the ceremony, and then we see that, hey, Switzerland, Iran, and Taiwan is in the top 3, but we don't know who is where yet. Yeah. And then there's like this anticipation where they announce the country. Third place, I think it was, third place was Taiwan. And then second place, it was either Iran and us. And then we hear Iran. That means we are at the first place, right? And at this point, we're so happy. And yeah, this is basically the story of how my teammate and I got the first place worldwide and got the cybersecurity world champion title.
That's it's a pretty awesome story. You know, not straightforward, a huge amount. How does something like that compare to? Because there's other competitions other than this. There's also big competitions like DEF CON, which you've competed in, like other things. How does something like, let's say, DEF CON, which is probably one of the most well-known capture the flag competitions, how does that compare to something like World Skills?
So DEF CON is indeed pretty popular. I think when people think about CTF, that's the name that most often comes. It's like at the biggest conference. It's been running for 30 years or something. And yeah, it has a lot of heritage, let's say. It was one of the biggest competition, and hackers of all around the world wanted to be part of it as like an accomplishment, right? And nowadays it's still running, and there's 8 teams each time going to the finals. Oh no, 16 teams. Well, 12 teams. Oh, I lost count already. And there are all of these teams that are coming to the finals in Vegas every year, and it is an intense experience. It's quite different because you're not 2 people, you're 100 people team there, right? So your contribution is much harder to see, but at the same time, if you are with the right team, with the right people, the hardest problems with the best people around you, and just work together to solve the most interesting and complex problems you could see in competitions, right? I think it's awesome to see that this tradition is only getting like better and better. It's not dying with time, it's just growing, right? And it's an awesome achievement if you're able to go there.
Well, I want to switch up gears a little bit and change the subject, but first we're going to refresh our sake. We're going to try a different sake now. Cheers.
This one is quite different. I think it's more acids.
Yeah, it's definitely, the other one's definitely smoother. So I've been learning a little bit about sake, and the smoothness and nuttiness of it comes from 2 things: the brewing technique, but also the water. So Japan has like all these natural springs within it. So kind of you can start to I can't really, but some people can taste the region of it based on that. So I think this one probably has a more kind of probably water with a kind of more dissolved solids in it, so more minerals. Okay, so you've been in the world of competitive hacking. You've achieved the highest kind of moments of this world, being in DEF CON, winning the World Skills Championship. You're now gone into another very competitive, very crazy world of startups. What made you want to do that?
All of these competitions I was doing, I realized that logical next step is just to solve security, or at least try to solve security. All of those competitions, all of these learning resources, originally they come from the fact that we've been trying to make unhackable possible, right? Being able to find all of the security issues in the code before attackers are able to find them. Being able to just put all of the mitigations and protections to make sure that we're not getting hacked. Yet we are still all vulnerable and unable to find a concrete, definitive solution to it, right? And I wanted to give a shot at it, right? There was all of these advancements with AI that were absolutely huge, and I was at a point where I wanted to try it out, just tinkering around it. And I quickly saw the potential, which was huge. AI was able to find security issues the same way I was doing it, but at a much larger scale and at a much higher speed. And all that was lacking wasn't the pure raw intelligence. It was already here. It was just lacking the infrastructure, the architecture around it, something that would orchestrate this intelligence and put it against real life problems, right? I started building an application that's able to automatically analyze codes, find security issues, and give developers remediations, ways for them to just fix them. But very quickly I realized that, and now I'm coming back to breaking is easier than building. I'm not a builder. I don't know how to create stuff. I only know how to break stuff. I know how to break stuff well at that point, right? But I'm still unable to build something properly. And fortunately for me, one of the big advantage of competitive hacking is that you meet a lot of people. And through the Swiss national hacking team, I met Manaf, which later became the co-founder of Hacker, the startup we're building. And he was able to really help me on all of the building sides, being able to build a whole interface between the developer and these AI stuff that's finding issues, right? He was able to build whole benchmarks to only make the AI better and improving it at what it's doing. Thanks to his help and the help of other people around us, we're really able to get something great and working well. It was able to even start getting good results at these same hacking competitions. In fact, I think it was able to solve a challenge that's only 5 teams out of 500 were able to solve it. Well, it was able to hack it, right?
Your AI system was able to hack it. Wow.
It was absolutely impressive. When I saw this, I thought that, okay, we need to make something out of it. We need to give it to the people, to the developers.
This kind of leads me to some more questions. Hearing what you said, you're a startup hacker, you're creating AI automated pen tests. You're basically creating AI versions of you, trying to create these models that can then hack things. It's interesting you're talking about, you're building something that can break something, which is kind of interesting. I quite like that. You then believe that with the help of AI, we can solve security? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know if we're able to solve it, but we're able to do a very big step forward to having unhackable applications. That is for sure, because now if you look at the current standards, which is to call pen testers whenever you need, either for certification, either you need to do twice a year, so every 6 months as you call them. I mean, I won't say it's bad, it is good that you do this, right? But the issue is that what happens when you are pushing code the day after the pen test? Well, it's not getting reviewed for another 5 months, 3 weeks, and 6 days.
Yeah.
What happens if, I don't know, you want to have a pen test for a feature you just published now, you want to have a pen test directly right now, but you have to actually wait 2 weeks for them to start and then another 2 weeks for them to, do the pen test and create a report. It's not everyone have this patience. And this just becomes frustrating because security is becoming an obstacle instead of something that empowers you to really, push your code to production and have the best application for your user, right? And having this obstacle, this frustration is really not what we should aim for. Security should really be something that developers are able to have in their application by default without going through painful processes. And being able to automate it with AI, people don't need to book a pen test, having 2 weeks and having discussions and meetings. They can just put their link, maybe their code base if they want, and then they get a whole report with all of the issues. And maybe we can even integrate a way for them to automatically fix those, right? We can propose patches, and then it just becomes a matter of minutes. And in a few minutes, they're able to protect all of the users they have on their application without having to, spend 3 weeks just having to go all of the traditional process, right?
We need to start wrapping up soon, but I do want to ask you something, but kind of before we get into the last segment is, we've talked about a lot about defense, right? These AI models that can hack for the purpose of pen testing. What about on the other side? Let's say that you're not such a nice guy. Let's say that you're working for an APT group or something, and you're also developing the exact same thing. What's the risk that this technology is developed by malicious actors instead of defensive actors?
Oh, this is going to happen. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And I think the answer is it's already there. It's just that we're at a stage where even the defensive people that have the support of VCs and millions to spend into research, even for them, it's still a research problem. They still have to create this technology, right? And we're getting there. We are able to, as I said, get better than most of the competitive hackers on web exploitation itself. But it's not a solved problem yet, right? And I think that it's still very new technology. I think it started becoming realistic only a year ago. So we or only at the beginning here. But I do think that as we are getting closer to a product that's actually usable in production, and we're getting there already. Nowadays, they just use open source models and no one can stop them. Not even OpenAI, Anthropic. I mean, if an open source model can be used by them, they will be using it for automating hacking, right? And now the issue is that instead of targeting just a few websites, they can target whole countries and be able to attack all of the websites of a country to attack the economy directly, right? This is very scary stuff.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that cheerful note. All right, so we're going to move into our last segment now, but we need to refill the sake for this one here. Cheers. Okay, we have a game now. The game is called Would You Rather. I'm going to give you two options. You have to pick one. Would you rather reuse the same password for everything, or hard code all of your API keys and secrets inside your Git repository? The Git, like inside your source code. It's not publicly exposed. Your Git repository is private.
I would probably go with the hard-coded API keys and stuff in the code base. It's absolutely terrible to have this, but it still requires an entry point to be able to access that, right? And it is a very thin line of defense, but it is one. If there's no 2FA and the password is like public and it will become public very quickly, well, there's nothing I can do, right?
Yeah. Good call. I think I agree with that one. Usually I tend to disagree, but that's mostly because I'm an idiot. But I agree with this one. So I don't know what that says about you. Okay. Another question here. Would you rather deploy every single Friday at 5 p.m. and you can only deploy once a week? None of this continuous deployment nonsense that's happening with DevOps. Or your application cannot have any firewall behind it. It's completely, all ports are public.
If you have an issue and everything is on fire, like at 6 p.m., then you have to wait another week to push. This is just like... I can't. Like, this will just like end businesses if this would happen, right? Like firewall can still do mitigations and have like strong rotating passwords for all of your services. Like production at 5 p.m. Friday only, it's just going to break in.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Very good. I think I agree with that one too. Well, Philippe, thanks so much for joining us. It's been awesome to have you, and I hope to have you back sometime.
Yes, we'd love to.
Well, that's all we had for you this week. We're coming at you with another episode next Thursday. It's going to be a great show. I'm very excited. We have some very special guests lined up. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give us a 5-star rating if you're listening to this on a podcasting platform. And until next week, stay safe.